All right, Gearheads, welcome to the show.
Morning.
Good morning.
Little punchy.
Yeah. Yes, we just watched the Chinese Grand Prix, and we're definitely punchy. Max Verstappen wins the race.
Who?
Lando Norris. Yeah, Lando. Hey, we're getting past the perfunctory part. Max won, but Lando came in second on a one-stopper. How about that?
Yeah, and a good decision. It was quite early. They said, okay, look, we can do this on a one-stop. And it looked, when all the safety cars were coming in and out, that might not have worked out for him. And in fact, at one point, Rosberg said, I'm not so sure now it's going to work out for Lando. But it had. So good for him, and good result for McLaren. Great pit stops by both McLaren and Red Bull. You were timing every one of them.
Gosh, the Red Bull, they're just unbelievable. This is John Massengale, that's Jonathan Green, and Chris Medland is on the line. Chris, what'd you think, buddy?
Yeah, well, picking up what you were just saying about those pit stops, yeah, the Red Bull double stack, when I think Verstappen was 2.1 seconds and Perez was 2 seconds.
Yeah, well, they followed that up with a 1.9 and a 2.0. Verstappen had a 1, and then on the next round, they weren't double stack, but they were the next 2 pit stops.
It's remarkable how consistent that team is in every facet right now. I think that's one of the things we were talking about at pre-race about Mercedes. Where are they now with this era of car not being able to get it right? What a surprise! But I think it shows that Mercedes was set up to be successful in that era from 2014 onwards with the power unit and with a certain type of regulation, and hasn't been able to adapt quickly enough. I think with Red Bull, we've seen that, they did drop off when they didn't have the power unit, but they've always been able to produce a car regardless of regulations since 2009. That's been competitive, and that's not their only strength. Their strength is everywhere. They've got arguably the best driver in the world right now racing for them. Definitely the one who's the most comfortable in that car. They've got arguably the best power unit with Honda, but they've worked together on that, and they've got the best pit crew as well. It's so impressive.
Chris, I got a question for you. Do you think Honda can continue this purple patch? Because obviously that literally everything that Aston Martin are going to do in the future rides on that. They've got it right now. Can they keep it?
I think it's less likely, but the reason for that is because right now we have frozen regulations on the power unit. So when they did get it right and they got into a position with a bit of an advantage, then everything was frozen ahead of 2026, and to ensure that Red Bull could basically keep an engine to run because Honda were pulling out. So it worked out very well for Red Bull in that sense. And that's one of the reasons we don't see fluctuations in power unit performance anymore. So I think it would be naive to then expect that to just continue on a linear path into 2026. I think it's going to be a big shakeup. I think Honda probably are one of the best placed, if not the best placed. I wouldn't write Mercedes off based on what they did in 2014. And that's a company that will be hurting right now, but we'll see that as an opportunity to try kind of make a leap with the power unit going into 2026. So, I think Honda will come under a bit more pressure basically in that time, but I don't think there's anyone you can stand up and say they're definitely going to be the best going into that era. We got whispers of Mercedes around 2014 coming that they were looking very good. Haven't had that really stand out from anyone up to now. It's still, still over a year away, but I think it's going to be pretty open for someone to get it right in that era.
Isn't it frustrating how Chris gets it right every time, Jonathan? I'm going to blame it on it's 4 a.m. for us and it's only 10 a.m. for him.
Oh, he's as bright as a bush now. He's up and running. He's been for a jog during the race.
I did get it wrong, though, didn't I, with the predictions? Because I went for Checo P2 and I think Leclerc P3.
Yes, you did.
And as you guys were saying as we came onto the show, that with Lando, there was a spell where I thought this will get interesting around Checo, even without the safety cars. In fact, it may well have been that he'd have been in a better spot certainly without the second safety car, but without one of them. But I didn't think anyone was going to have the pace to hold off a Red Bull today. So that actually surprised me. And I don't think that was Perez's best second half of a race, let's put it that way.
Yeah, he basically had the same gap as soon as Perez got behind Lando, he basically kept that same gap for almost the entire remaining, 15 laps or something like it, a dozen laps or so?
There was a point when Norris made a mistake at the hairpin and he lost, I think, 1.2 seconds to Perez right there.
Down to 3.7, yeah.
Yeah, and I tweeted it out being like, that could be really costly because he's going to need that whole buffer because Perez is going to come back at him, and it's whether he's got enough in his tyres and whether he, basically that was a good 4 or 5 laps at the pace they had been doing, it would have taken longer for Perez to get there. So I genuinely thought that was going to hurt Norris, and then his response was just settle down for a few laps and then pull away again. It was very impressive.
Chris, the accordion effect, was anybody to blame for that? Ricardo, Stroll, Alonso?
It always the car at the back, in a sense. You're the one that can avoid that contact. I think it saw how close it got because Ricardo was basically touching Piastri, but barely. Stroll, definitely misjudgment. 10 seconds is basically what they're told is a standard penalty now for contact, which I think is maybe a bit harsh in some scenarios, but that contact took Ricardo out the race. So it was a mistake on Stroll's part. They're all trying to, the reason it happens is because they're all trying to stay so close because they know the race is about to restart. They want to be right on the gearbox of the car in front. Yeah. And that is a risk-reward situation. It's on the car behind to judge that. And, if you want to ensure you don't run into the back of someone, you don't sit so close behind them. There was a whole inside of the track to be as well to try not to run into the back of someone, but they wanted to open up the exit of the corner. So, yeah, it's always the car at the back. It doesn't mean that anyone else didn't maybe slightly misjudge it, but Stroll got it wrong the most. So, yeah, I do blame him for that. I don't think you can blame Alonso at the front because, again, he can't worry about the people behind him. They have to worry about the car in front of them.
True. There you go.
Right before the end of the race, right when Zhou Guanyu tore off the part of his front wing, and I said, wait, Verstappen's going to run over some of that.
But he did.
The debris.
Well, he thought he might.
He thought he might have, and I jumped up out of my chair.
Well, you can't miss it. It's bright green.
Yeah, it's true. Hey, so Chris, what about Stroll's reaction to his 10-second penalty for all of that?
I think any driver's going to be frustrated and annoyed and feel it's unfair and they're hard done by. As we said, it's kind of everyone was doing it to some degree, and he just did it to the worst degree. But I think in reality, the whole reason that is there is to then mean next time you don't end up running into the back of someone and ending their race. It's not saying that Stroll did something outrageous, but it's just that he was taking too much risk in following that crowd so closely, trying to get the better exit and stay close on a restart. Yeah. So understandable anger. But also understandable penalty. So, I think anyone who was in the cockpit and had their race ruined would be frustrated at that. But I think it was right.
And what about Lando? I mean, he got unlucky at the beginning of that safety car, but then got lucky that everything took so long that how it morphed into a full safety car. Do you think that's a good assessment, Chris?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was when it was VSC. It took so long to go VSC. I thought it was going to be because I thought they're going to need to put marshals on track to move the car. That car's not going to move itself, or at least they're in the runoff area with no barrier between them and other traffic. So I was surprised it didn't go VSC earlier. But then the fact that it genuinely was as Norris had exited the final corner, talking like 2 or 3 seconds between when he would have come into the pits and when he had to do another lap, and it allowed Leclerc to come in. And I did think that had ruined Norris's advantage. Basically, his strategy was suddenly going to be hurt compared to Leclerc, and that would have been really unfortunate. But then, the long VSC, again, surprising that stayed so long because it was clear that the car was stuck in gear, and they were then going to need to get a crane out there. But in a sense, I heard on the commentary Nico Rosberg kind of complaining about it. I think the first part, not going VSC earlier, he's right. That should have been a VSC much sooner. Yeah. But everything else, you kind of have to let play out and find out the situation before you can then react to it. So. It did. It ensured that Norris didn't lose out like he looked like he was going to. But I don't think he really gained too much. He got a bit against Perez, but the fact, obviously, that then the field got bunched up and Perez and Verstappen both got to pit under the safety car to basically regain that tyre difference actually helped. So you got to remember that final stint we're watching, Perez had newer tyres than Norris. The whole point originally had been that Norris should have had much fresher tyres than Perez for the middle part of the race, and probably been quicker than him and maybe even stayed ahead with the timing of the VSC. And then Perez would have needed a later stop as well. So it kind of brought them all level in positions just with Perez behind Norris and Leclerc, and he couldn't get it done. So that's why it's such a strong performance from McLaren and Norris there at the end of the race.
Yeah, fantastic from Norris, really. I was just sitting there thinking, is this, how much... Look, he had a little bit of luck with the safety car, but the fact that he went that distance on those tires, that was fantastic. And look at this Ferrari, 4 and 5, kind of quietly, all of a sudden, fantastic, points finish anyway. With Leclerc in 4th, Sainz in 5th. So, what about Alonso coming from the back there at the end there? We knew that tire strategy he was gonna have to pit. I thought he might get higher than 7th, Jonathan. I thought maybe he might creep up to 6th.
Yeah, it was touch and go, wasn't it? I mean, he made a lot of the right decisions. I mean, he chose soft right at the beginning, and he kind of got his wish because there were safety cars. But by then, the timing didn't all work out for him. But good race all the same. I mean, it's been a good weekend for Alonso.
Yeah, and super aggressive.
Very impressive,
Alonso.
I thought.
What's that, Chris?
Yeah, the way he executed the moves he needed to,
yes.
I thought was very strong. He so nearly dropped it, didn't he, out the final corner? I mean,
talk
about opposite lock.
Right.
He had the wheel upside down. It was a heck of a save.
That was ridiculous.
That obviously meant it would have been a very different narrative to his race weekend if that's how it had finished. But I actually thought he was going to threaten Sainz and Russell, and Ferrari even said the same. He ended up 4.6 seconds behind Russell. And Mercedes said basically George dropped back away from Sainz because they wanted to make sure he had the tyre life to keep Alonso at bay, either by his pace being good enough that the end of the race came and Alonso hadn't got there, or that he had enough life to kind of fight. Because obviously Alonso's tyres are degrading as he attacks that final stint so much. But that was entertaining to watch. That was kind of a nice little twist to have at the end to see how far he could get through the field.
Well, when he went off, and when I saw it real time, I thought he was 90 degrees. I thought, how did he save that?
Well, especially after seeing Sainz do exactly the same, but lose out and hit the wall.
Yeah. Keep his foot in it, as Nico Rosberg said. And by the way, I have to say, it was pretty entertaining listening to Nico and Crofty kind of bickering at each other. I thought that was pretty good, too. I see you
must
smiling.
Be said, the fact that Nico had, when he said about the reaction time for Alonso, so he's nearly 43, and the reactions you need to save something like that are so rapid. That is a very good point. That we're talking about, will there be a drop off in Alonso's form when he hits 45 or whatever? You maybe would have expected it by now. He is showing no signs of the little tiny details that start to cost you time and create incidents. That they're not hitting him yet. So he is amazing that he still performs at such a level. And as you say, that was one where Rosberg was in awe, and then you had incidents such as Magnussen driving into the side of Sonoda. And
he didn't hold back on that one.
He's right. No, you saw that collision certainly from the offboard as well. And Magnussen surely shouldn't be opening the corner up so much. It hurt himself, but there should never have been contact there on the exit.
No, I agree.
Oh, let's see what else. Zhou Guanyu, I thought that was a nice little touch.
The whole thing, the whole weekend for Zhou.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, you've got to say, if the 25 calendar has China on, which it does, he's got a job for as long as they can go to China, I think.
It was so nice to see actually how emotional he was afterwards, because he mentioned, I think on Friday, the pressure that he felt under in the build-up was huge. And I think he's probably really disappointed with that outcome, because I think he had the pace to get in and around the points, and the race just didn't really go his way. Obviously, another slow stop in there for Sauber as well. It just was, it wasn't the fairy tale it could have been. And he went and damaged his front wing with that move late on, as we mentioned, on Magnussen, which meant he couldn't get to Gasly either. So he didn't quite finish on the high he wanted to. And I think there was a bit of everything there, where it was a release of emotion from how much pressure he's been under, and the acceptance or acknowledgement of this amazing support he's had. Every move he pulled, even though it was for 14th, 15th place,
they were going nuts.
They were going crazy.
I know.
It was brilliant. So, I think it was just, it must have been an exhausting weekend for him. And as you said on the pre-race show, Johnny, hopefully it's one that leads to backing that helps him security as well. Because I feel like in that car, both him and Bottas, when they're doing a good job, it's not really getting seen. It's going to be tough for them to get a seat anywhere else other than stay with Sauber, which is going to become Audi, who are looking at bigger names like Carlos Sainz. So he is under threat still, despite this interest.
Well, I haven't asked you this before, but where do you think Sainz is going to pop out?
I think more likely Audi now. I think there was actually a hint that maybe Aston Martin could be an option, and it hasn't quite worked out for him with Alonso staying. I'd be amazed, obviously, if they replaced Stroll with Sainz, but that would be some lineup. I think any other team would be, biting off every hand on offer to get that. But Helmut Marko said this weekend that they've spoken with Sainz just to kind of get a picture, and essentially you quite often agree terms Yeah, you work out the terms you would have if you need them. I don't think Red Bull, today won't have really helped massively, but I don't think Red Bull are looking too seriously outside of Perez. But Sainz would be their number one choice as a backup, I think, if they were going outside of their pool. And they say what Audi are offering is way too much for what Red Bull would offer. Not sure that's strictly true. I think Red Bull probably could offer whatever they wanted to. If they wanted Sainz that badly, but it's what they value their number 2 driver cost at when they've got Verstappen in the number 1 seat. And yeah, I think the Audi project's an exciting one, but it just means next year is going to be so tough, I think, for whoever goes in there.
Can I expand on that then? So here's one of my quick thoughts. So we've been talking about this Kimi Antonelli. He finally got a run in Austria, which I haven't heard anything bad, but it's, I'm sure he did fine, the 17-year-old. But where in this discussion, this is my quick thoughts, where is Schumacher? Where is Ocon? Where is Drogovic? Do their careers just end now?
Drogovic, I don't really see in the frame for anywhere. Potentially, if
Indy
it ends up with as an opportunity at Williams might create something, but that's going to be the last kind of plate to fall in that sense. If other moves have happened and Williams want to make a change and Lawson's in the seat somewhere already and Sainz to sign somewhere else, then maybe Drogovic would be considered for that seat. But who knows? Like Logan's still in it, and if he has a solid season and shows more improvement towards the end of the year, and that seat's still available, he might be able to hold on again. So, I think that's tough for Drogovic. I think Lawson will see in an RB. I'm not sure who he'll replace yet, but I think he'll get that seat next year.
Yeah.
Schumacher, I think realistically, I think that ship has sailed for him. He did quite enough. Yeah, I just don't think he stood out enough. I like him. He's a very solid driver, but I just don't think he did enough to force his way back in now. And Ocon, I think, is actually a good solid backup for Mercedes if they want him. But I think Mercedes would also then look at, well, why would we put him in? Because either they're going to put Antonelli in there because he's ready, or they're not going to have Antonelli ready quite yet and they want someone for a year or two. But would you then pull Ocon out of Alpine to put him in for 1 year and then bid him off again? I'm not sure they'll do that. Same with Sainz. That is the thing. Sainz won't go for that 1 year deal. Ocon might. But so I think he's in that mix. He's just
because Ocon and Gasly need to rebuild their careers now in a car that obviously is going sideways.
I have a quick thought, Jonathan. Jonathan has this new theme. He's calling them quick thoughts, but I have one. So if you're choosing, if you're out there and you're one of these drivers and Williams calls, do you go, do I want to go with the team that might just take my car away and give it to my teammate if things don't go smoothly?
Ooh, hard, long memory.
Yeah, it depends who it is, doesn't it? Let's be honest. If you're
those
right,
are circumstances.
I know.
Yeah, and some of those other drivers as well will be ones that will just take any opportunity to get on the grid. If we're talking someone who's not on the grid right now,
right?
But then, if you'll say Carlos Sainz, if that actually became a realistic option, then you're not going to worry that would be potentially happening. And we've got to also say Albon's got to stay there in that case. I think Albon is probably he's on a few radars. Mercedes and Red Bull were looking at him.
Yeah,
but again, it's whether that was would you drop him in to Mercedes just for 1 year or two? Two maybe, but I don't think about one.
I think Ocon for a year would definitely be a go.
Okay, let's take our first break really quick here, and when we come back, we'll have more of our quick thoughts on the Chinese Grand Prix. Back after this. All right, I see Metal Fan 1 says, where's Bob? No, wait, Metal Fan Bob? And he asked where Bob is? But anyway, that's your username. Sorry. I'm going to tell you where Bob Varsha is anyway, because Bob is doing the...
Let's call him.
Yeah, let's call him. It's 5 a.m. in Atlanta. Let's call Bob. No.
It's his birthday, isn't it?
Bob is doing the auction. Which one is he doing here? I'll look at his text. He's doing, which one does he do now? I can't remember. It's 4 o'clock.
He's selling M-Pates. He's selling...
Barrett Jackson. That's what
one.
he's doing, yes. So he's doing that. And so that's why Bob Varsha is not with us tonight, this morning, today, tomorrow, whatever it is. What else we have?
A certain social media app tells me that it's also Bob Varsha's birthday today.
Oh, no wonder.
Oh, well, I still have to get...
So that's why he's skiving off.
Well, yeah, that's probably it. I do need to help Bob get his Twitter account working again.
And mine.
We got a bunch of comments. AIX, tough lap for VCARB. Good strategy for Norris, Ferrari. Lando reflexes still astound. Checo asleep. Andy P. Lando got so lucky that the virtual safety car was as long as it was. Yeah, we were talking about the Indy. I thought it got thrown away because FIA waited so long to put out that virtual safety car. That was an interesting take, Andy. Chris, what's your take on that? Why were they waiting so long?
So I'm pretty sure it was that they thought that Bottas's car was far enough off the track and would have been just rolled away by marshals using the crane, that they could just do it under double waved yellows.
Right.
And I think with the way the track layout is there, it's not too far from a barrier. So they thought this will be pretty quick. We'll do it under double waved yellows. But as soon as basically Bottas got out the car and it was where it was and he couldn't move it, then they went VSC. But that seems to take too long for me.
Here we go.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60 as the official cybersecurity partner of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. CrowdStrike protects against cyber threats so the team can focus on what matters, their next win. The revolutionary cloud-native unified CrowdStrike Falcon platform harnesses the speed and power of the cloud to protect and defend organizations of all sizes against increasingly complex threats, stopping breaches before they happen. Because on and off the track, the stakes couldn't be higher. A split second can make the difference between victory and defeat. When every second counts, protection shouldn't slow you down. It should fuel your momentum. CrowdStrike, protection at every turn. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. I saw CrowdStrike at the Sonoma race. We saw them in the safety car. They are all over motorsports, and we all thank them for all of their support across Formula One and everything else. All right, boys, what else do we have from today's race? Chris, I have to say, I saw your tweet about Max Verstappen wins the Grand Prix, but he lights up the rears in the few corners and in celebration. But he was all over the track, and I have to say, I hold my breath a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm thinking, don't do that. You're gonna,
He's in control.
I know he is, but still, it's like, what if that little noise that he heard was a puncture? And when he did that...
That's why you're not a racing driver.
That's exactly right. That and many other reasons.
It would be the most pathetic kind of way to lose a race, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's what I mean.
And a puncture catches you out. But I think... As you say, that Johnny says that they're in such control, those drivers of these cars. It's actually that Max did it out of the hairpin too. I saw he was drifting out the hairpin. That's why I was like, oh, he's showboating now. But he had such a big gap. Clearly, the team had told him that the tyre pressures were all fine. Normally, he'd be going for the fastest lap at that time, wouldn't he? Quite often, he gets that on the final lap, but Alonso made sure that was impossible. So that was quite good. They put on a bit of a show for the fans.
If you want to have a comparison, two wheels, which were here just last week. Look up YouTube, Frankie Keeley.
Oh,
he celebrated. He thought he'd finished and won the race, so he celebrated and was a lap early. And he's going down the back straight, and everybody's not like looking at him.
Like, what are you doing?
They're not cheering along with him. And finally, he kind of realised.
But did he still win the race?
No. There's a couple in bike racing that's happened to.
That is just...
Yeah, I seem to remember seeing something recently somewhere else as well that was the same thing. And the pit crew trying to like wave because they were celebrating across the line. They're like, no, go. And you could see in the garage and they're just absolutely distraught that it's been thrown away. Whoever it was, I think finished second. But yeah, that's a shocker. I mean,
I got another quick thought, Jonathan.
Oh, no, I should never have given you this.
So, driver of the day, no points for Piastri, and he held on to P8 with a broken car, and he was running as the same pace as the Mercedes with a broken car, but no points for for driver of the day. Just a quick thought.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying he got no respect for hanging on to P8 with a broken car.
But Norris was the driver of the day.
I know. I'm saying no respect for Oscar Piastri.
I guess it is late.
Well, you're just giving him some respect.
Yeah, you gave
exactly.
it some.
I just gave him some respect.
Rightly so. I did think he was going to drop like a stone, actually. I thought Hamilton was going to get him comfortably, but it's quite interesting. We get sent the, like Mercedes very good at giving some post-race notes just to kind of explain why they did what they did, just a quick snapshot of the ideas behind their strategy, for example, and that sort of thing. And from where they started, the team seems to think that the final result was close to the maximum they could have got with the car they had today, so that they executed everything as best they could. And said that Russell's main objective was just to get ahead of Alonso and Piastri, which he did, and then obviously just kept Alonso at bay coming back later. But said that Lewis struggled with rear tyre temperature throughout the race, and I think that was the balance that he had on the car just kind of ruined his rears. But then they said he was unfortunate not to take P8 at the end, wasn't quite able to get into Piastri's DRS range. And I'm thinking, unfortunate's not the word. Like if you've got a car in front that's damaged, and your car is not quick enough to get you there, and your driver is driving it as quickly as he can, but it can't get there. Yeah, there's no misfortune there. That's just the car is not set up well enough, and you're not quick enough. So Hamilton had a solid recovery in the end because it was a bad start. I don't think the soft tyre was the right tyre to be on at the start at all in the end. Was
he hated it.
Yeah.
And he wasn't
slack
alone.
too, I think he radioed in, wasn't it? Can't do anything on this tyre.
Sargent made that last for any decent spell, and it still meant that when he came out from his pit stop, he was adrift at the back. So I remember the commentary kind of going, what a good job he's doing. He's up in 12th, and he was doing a good job to still be on those tyres.
Yeah.
But the pace with those tyres was slow. So, I think with hindsight, we talked about it pre-race, that it could be done, and it might be an aggressive strategy. Hindsight, that didn't work. But you can't really overly criticise, when we thought beforehand, oh, that'd be good to watch. And it doesn't work. We can't have a go at them for that.
Sorry, Jonathan.
Just catching up on my basketball news.
We're both so punchy, and we were just kind of staring at the television. It no longer has F1 coverage. It's
I'm hoping
ESPN.
you might come back.
It's just ESPN.
I do have one point to make, which is so different from last year. Last year's theme, it was who was the worst team in Formula One, you remember? And we couldn't decide.
Right.
If you look at it now, this year, I'm just looking at the constructors.
Yeah.
The battle is on for sixth place between Haas and RB. There are just 2 points between them for sixth place. But then the drop off or the drop up is huge. So the top five are some 33 points ahead of the rest. Mm-hmm. And then Williams, Alpine, and Sauber yet to score a point. So the game is on to finish sixth, and Haas are in that game.
5 races, 5 points for Haas.
Yeah.
4 for Nico, and 1 for Magnussen. But Chris, did you see this? Motorsport.com tweeted during the race that they had an exclusive story about a new point system being considered, maybe even for starting next year, which gives points all the way down to P12. Do you see that?
So I'll admit, I didn't see that tweet. I did hear David Croft reference it on the commentary. And so I should have given a bit of credit then to motorsport.com if that was the case. But no, I hadn't seen it. I know it's been a discussion a few times, and this may well be one where they just talk about it again and then go and try and get some fan feedback. That might be a reason why the story now comes out. You put it out there and see what the reaction is, and then when you have the discussion, you're kind of aware, will it go down well or not? But I think there is value to it. It's funny. I appreciate that we're talking about you are diluting the achievement of scoring points compared to what it used to be. I mean, F1, traditionally there was a point where top 6 only scored, and then it was top 8, then it was top 10. And some people are like, oh, well, now it's half the cars get a point just for showing up. But it isn't just for showing up. We've got such a competitive field all the way through it. So there's so many teams that get in and around the points and very close to it. But with the top 5 having a little bit of an advantage over the rest, it does feel a bit almost unfair on, as you said, this fight for 6th between Haas and RB. Quite often, they've got at least one car in the top 10 against those, they're having to take advantage of other opportunities, but they're winning a very fierce battle back there. Yeah. And if they don't get rewarded for a point, as Nico Rosberg, I think, said in the commentary, then, fans don't quite see the value. We saw some great racing between Magnussen and Stroll.
Yes.
At that time. But if that still ends up being for 1 or 2 points, then it just seems to matter that bit more. And I think there's other sports that do that. and do a better job of it. So, yeah, I can see that it's got value. I'm easy either way. If it stays as it is, then great. You're saying there's a huge value on scoring a point. The single point is a big deal, and we should let teams celebrate when they get a 10th place or whatever. But if we want to try and make it a little bit more, I guess, rewarding for everybody, and make all the racing matter up and down the field, then it's a good idea.
Yeah, and let's just look at our sport straight in the face and go, look, this domination by Verstappen is not new. We've had different eras. Mercedes have had one, Ferrari have had one, and so on and so forth. McLaren.
It gives us something to talk about.
I was about to
say,
it's always good. The moving target that is motorsport is always gonna, there's always one team gonna suddenly go right. It could be Brawn one year because of a double diffuser. It could be anything. But we've got to admit that is the case, and if that is the case, that's fine. But therefore, find another way of making what we do and what commentators do and what the sport needs to thrive on in a new world of social media where you want something to talk about. Because social media is only going to be negative now towards someone like Verstappen because he's doing all the winning. So you need stuff to talk about. And Joe is a good example today of something that has nothing to do with the points, but is a celebration of an achievement for being the first Chinese to bring out that crowd, and to put China on the map more so than it ever has been in motorsport. And I think, I just think that point system, it's easy to change. Who cares? Nobody's gonna, Red Bull aren't gonna be upset that somebody else is scoring the odd point here and there. What the heck?
I haven't thought this through. I literally was watching a race when this came out, but my gut
I was
reaction...
watching basketball until you turned it off.
Yeah, that's true. But yes, my gut reaction is I really like this idea. They propose all the way down to 12th place for points. So this proposed thing is the same points through 7th, and then 8th through 12th. They
Andy P,
scale it down to 1.
Andy P, we've renamed our Dark Horse Award to the team not in the top 5 who scores points award. I can see the point of giving more points back to P12, but I'm not sure I love it yet. But change may be needed. There you go.
There you go.
And to be fair, it's not an enormous change, is it? In the sense
Right.
that you just said,
Right.
John, it's you still get 8 points for 6th, 6 points for 7th, according to this proposal that motorsport.com have run. And then instead of 8th having 4 points, you get 5. Instead of 9th getting 2 points, you get 4. So the 10th getting 1 point, you get 3. And then 11th gets 2 and 12th gets 1. So
it's not going to change the championship win.
Yeah, and if you look at history, we often talk about, Villeneuve did this or Chris Amon did that, but they only had points for the top 8 back then. And you think, that would have been nice that so-and-so would have got a championship point back in the day. And so maybe we should look back in history. It's always a good way of looking to the future is to see what's happened in the past. And maybe we do need to extend the points again.
I think it's absolutely worth considering. So,
yeah, we also have to think attrition used to play such a big role.
Yes.
In Formula
Yes.
1. So when it was just the top 6, that kind of actually meant you could sometimes almost luck into it, and just finishing a race was an achievement, that sort of thing. But you could get rewarded just by seeing a checkered flag. Now it's so rare. I mean, today we have 3 retirements in the end, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
So it is rare that you don't have, that you have half the grid out. So you don't fear getting to a position here where there's not 12 finishes, so there's not enough points to be handed out. But similarly, I think this came up in the commentary was that, well, let's say you have to be classified to score a point. You can't get a point if you don't finish the race. So
that's true.
Even if you went further with it, but it will mean that if you do get a bit of a chaotic one and only 11 finish, well, 12th doesn't get a point if they didn't see the checkered flag. You still have to be good enough to finish the race.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
I think you should get points for staying up this late.
I think you should get points for being able to watch the NBC Sports Center while we're doing a radio show. All right,
there you go.
We're going to take another break. We'll be back after these messages.
I was only checking the presenter out.
I know, because she was wearing a miniskirt. That's what you were looking at on ESPN.
You turned it off on me.
Well, that's because it was distracting to me. That's why I turned it off.
Oh, thanks, Dad.
Andy P says, Jonathan, Andy P says, Thank you for noticing, John. Oscar gutted that one out for sure.
There you go.
So, see? Who else is out there? Kevin Kelly says, I'm depressed about Denny Rick.
Yeah.
He had a real chance to score points. Yeah, and if he had...
that could have changed things, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, he was hit from behind, no harm, no foul, but, it wasn't his fault, put it that way.
He's pretty annoyed about that, I can say. I've got some of the quotes from him.
Oh, what did he say?
Afterwards. He says it wasn't a small lack of judgment, that Stroll was miles off. So
yeah. I mean, he did hit him. I mean, like you say, the responsibility is with the one at the back, and you could see that unfolding. I mean, and we all saw it in slow-mo, but, come on. It's a restart. You know what you're all doing. You're all piling up behind to get ready. How it's racing 101, isn't it?
Hey, here's some good comments.
Says, go ahead.
Good comments. Kevin Kelly says, I'm wide awake. It's Alonso's fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Aubrey says, Alonso showed why he is who he is. Incredible moves. And Stroll showed why he is who he is, too. LOL. I looked at Stroll, and after he had pitched a fit for getting a penalty, he was so far back, it looked like he was further back than he should be after a 10-second penalty.
Put it this way: when it comes to the old people's home, I don't want to be in line for the buffet with Lonzo because he's going to get there, isn't he? He's going to beat you to the bloody fresh potatoes.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I think we caught up with everybody on YouTube. I wanted to get to those during the break.
Good effort, everyone on YouTube.
Hey, everybody, give us a like while you're on YouTube. We only got 3 likes.
Yes, or a 5-star.
Hi, this is Jay Leno from JayLenosGarage.com, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
There's a man who could invest in Speed City.
I was about to say, hasn't he not bought the company yet?
I think we should.
We could live in a garage.
I think we could do more shows at 4 a.m. I think that
it's
good for the.
My screensaver is a tent right now, and I'd love to crawl in there.
All right, let's see what else we got here. What else from the race, guys? We have some other stories that I want to get to, but I don't want to forget about anything else from the race today. Let me look at the finishing order and see what we've missed. That's constructor standings. George Russell.
I think actually something you said, John. Yeah. Just ahead of George. The 2 Ferraris. This wasn't their most impressive performance. I expect them to be much stronger here than they were. I don't know
everybody said that before the race.
Right. Yeah, I was expecting a lot more from them. Norris said it on team radio after the race that he'd insisted to his race engineer, Will Joseph, that he was going to be passed by the Ferraris, that they were going to get him.
Yeah.
And McLaren had obviously said, no, we think we've got the measure of them here. So it wasn't just us that was thinking that or expecting that. But even so, solid finish for them again, 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
Almost maximum points. I think essentially, they're the first 2 cars behind Perez, and it's just the fact that Norris has had a really good drive in there. So again, strong. But it has I keep pinning my hopes on the fact that Leclerc and Sainz are staying close enough to Verstappen that if Verstappen had another DNF or an issue or something, that we'd have a different championship leader. And I think Max has probably just pulled away too far now to ruin that for Miami. It'll need something crazy to happen in the sprint and the race there.
Or if Max if he crashed out celebrating right before he crossed the finish line.
There you go.
It makes me nervous when I saw him do that. All right, what else?
Well, especially when our commentary booth's right by the finish line here in Miami.
Yeah.
You come in and join us.
Miami.
Hello, lovely.
Yeah, we're going to be in the booth in Miami.
Yeah.
At least some of us are at some point. I don't know if I'm going to be actually in the booth. I know you and Bob are.
Oh, okay. You not coming to join us?
I don't know. If I'm invited, I might. I don't know. We'll see.
And presumably the chosen one will be there. Are you coming, Chris?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll be running around.
Miss Miami, would
people. No, never. So I'll be there bright and early and, bothering people with a microphone.
Are you going to do the same? Go ahead.
Hopefully going to have Daniel Ricciardo chat earlier in that weekend to bring to the show's pre-race show.
God.
Because as you said, it was ahead of this weekend. I was kind of thinking he could be a man under real pressure going there, and obviously he is hugely popular in the US. So
Yeah.
I thought we'd get a chat in with him.
Good timing for an
should we
interview with
speak in-
him.
Yeah, exactly. So Red Bull are trying to line that up for us, and then Logan Sargent and Leah Block as well. Actually,
Oh, good.
They're doing
Cool.
the rounds. They're over to the SiriusXM offices next Monday to go into the studio and stuff to actually go on a few shows. And I think there's a good effort there from Williams.
Are they on Wheel to Wheel?
American talent. They will be, yeah.
Oh,
we'll be getting
great.
an interview with them for that. And yeah, it's Williams are saying, look, it's obviously Logan's home race, but we've got this great American talent in F1 Academy as well, and we want to make sure everyone knows about them. So
Chloe Chambers,
that's
don't
been good
forget.
to see. Also there, yeah, for Haas. So yeah, plenty of people to get excited about going into that weekend.
What about George Russell's race, Jonathan?
Yeah. Actually,
Finishing sixth.
yeah. I mean, steady weekend compared to teammate, as it were. I know it was a mistake in qualifying that lost out Hamilton's starting position, but for where Mercedes are and for what has gone on in the last 5 races, Russell is flying the flag best he can.
Yep. Chris, you pointed this out in your pre-race documents, but look at Alpine, 11 and 13.
Yeah, definite progress there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, they got that
It
new
was-
floor
it-
and lighter floor, didn't they, with Ocon? So presumably both will have
Yeah.
that for Miami.
Yes, this was an upgrade that was meant to be in Miami originally, and Alpine managed to fast track it to China for one car. They got one version of it ready in time. So Ocon had to be careful not to damage it at any stage because there wasn't going to be a backup for him. And as you say, it wasn't just the fact that there should be more performance from the floor, but the fact it was lighter as well. And quite often that means just it being lighter is why you put it on. It might need some other components as part of the upgrade package to really make it work. But if you just save weight, you go quicker, regardless of the actual kind of downforce impact as well. So I think that's why they rushed that through. But I was actually more impressed with Gasly in the sense that he didn't have that upgrade and he was pretty competitive during the race weekend as well. I know it didn't all come together in the end for him as it kind of played out. But from qualifying, he got through to Q2 and he was only 2/10 off Ocon in Q2 as well. But Ocon got himself 13th on the grid, Gasly 15th. So that is progress. We've been used to seeing both Alpines out in Q1 or a big surprise if one of them gets through. And then obviously in the race, they were there or thereabouts, but got involved in, certainly Gasly got involved in some incidents. So I think it was just signs of life from Alpine, but also just a reminder of how tight it is there. Someone's got to be last. I keep saying it. Someone's got to be the slowest team. And it's been Alpine more often than not this year, but not by a second or something crazy, just by enough of a margin that's made it stand out. But they were in the mix this weekend.
And Chris, with your inside knowledge, Famine came out and said, we are not for sale. Do you think Alpine will survive the season without more talk of that?
Not without more talk, because I think that gets drummed up from anywhere. Anyway. I think that's a topic that just if a team's struggling, people will automatically question. You know, I'd have questioned it myself. Would Renault really be happy with the return it's getting? It's something that John and I touched on Wheel to Wheel this week, that Alpine exists in Formula One to promote the car brand, which is the sports car arm of Renault, and to give it global exposure. It's a marketing platform for them, just like Formula One is for everyone, but that's why it's the Alpine F1 team right now. And if it's last, that isn't great brand exposure. Now, it's still better than none, because far fewer people would hear the Alpine name without them being in Formula One, but there's only so long they can afford to be last before you start going, is this worth the investment? If then people look at the Alpine brand and think it doesn't represent excellence, or it's not great. So a weekend like this weekend even is just a step forward. We weren't really talking about them being slowest.
No,
that's better. So if they keep that going, then that sort of talk will go away. But I think it shows also with the investment that's been so far, and with the way that Formula One has evolved and the interest that's in it, and how close the field is, Alpine and Renault will feel that it won't take a huge amount to really get into that mix, at least at the head of that midfield this year. But certainly then, 2026, what's to say they can't actually go make a step if they've got a good engine into the top 5 group? You just don't quite know. And you see what Aston Martin have done, what McLaren have done, both from really poor positions a couple of years ago, And that's why I think Alpine will be more patient, or Renault will be more patient with Alpine.
Wouldn't it make sense business-wise to create a customer team? Because creating 2 engines only in Formula One seems like a huge investment.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, they did say that they had an agreement already with Andretti if Andretti got an entry. So they were going to supply them with power units until 28. So I believe that would still happen if Andretti does find a way of getting on the grid before then.
Well,
and I think Alpine and Renault probably would be smarter to actually push a bit harder for that, because you're right. One, they need that ally. They need that help from having another power unit. 2, it will make them money because they'll be selling that power unit to Andretti. But also, it then also gives them an opportunity to show just how good it is. You know, how high the standard is.
It's reliable.
Everyone keeps saying, or some of the comments Mario was given earlier on the pre-race show about how it was offensive that they were saying, you're going to struggle if you come into F1 at short notice. But almost let them prove that. Let Formula One put its money where its mouth is and go, okay, you're in, and you'll see how hard it is. And if Alpine then are comfortably beating an Andretti, for example, again, that's probably kudos to Alpine and its brand to say, wow, the level that these 10 teams all operate at is actually extremely high. And if it's the opposite is true, and Andretti come and beat them, well, then there was definitely no reason to keep them out. So
good point.
I know I'm twisting it back to that argument from earlier, but
no, I
feel like from Alpine's point of view, it would make sense.
I say don't ever bet against Andretti is all I can tell you. Hey, there is a model for Alpine, and it's called the Lawrence Stroll model, where you dump huge piles of money, and it works. I mean, he's talked about, look what the Formula One team is, clearly it's working. You get an Alonso, and you give him a lot of money. But the road cars, how many cars have they sold, Chris? Have you seen these stats, right? How they have, it's been an enormous boon to the road car Aston Martin company. I don't know about the ROI. I don't know how much money, he spent or how much money he's getting back in profit, but it's certainly working.
I'll admit I haven't seen the figures, but if it's going up, then that makes sense. Again, that's one of the reasons
said it was
why
huge.
You have. That is one of the reasons you have a car manufacturer attributed to your team, or why car manufacturers want to be involved in F1. Because even though there is very little crossover in anything that you build on an F1 car that then goes into your road cars, certainly normal road cars, the awareness, the brand awareness is massive. It's just such a brilliant marketing platform to a very engaged and passionate following and audience. So, Alonso getting less so actually about his abilities, but just the headlines he gets, the news coverage he gets, the name, and him in Aston Martin green all the time. And I think now, you go to most people on the street that just know what Formula One is. They don't even need to follow it. But if you said, have you heard of Formula One? They said yes. You said, have you heard of Fernando Alonso? If they said yes, I imagine more than half of them, if you then said, who does he race for? They will tell you it's Aston Martin. They will be aware now. I'm sure there's plenty that still would be like, not sure. I don't follow it closely, but there'll be a bunch that know it's Aston Martin, and that in itself helps to promote that brand. So
no rumors.
Right, that's a clear sign of the impact of being involved in F1 as a name.
No rumors that his new contract means he's also going to be the first bilingual James Bond.
No. Although we did hear that Taylor Swift managed to drop an Aston Martin reference in her latest album.
Oh, nice.
Which everyone was saying was a kind of, well, one, that's look at the brand awareness, massive. And 2, that shows that maybe it didn't completely pass her by when there were all these rumors about Fernando Alonso and Taylor Swift last year.
That's right.
I saw Lawrence Stroll on, I think it was CNBC, one of the business news networks here in the States. And he was talking about this exact thing, about how the investment he made in Formula One is paying off. Now, you can play with numbers, but all right, we got to get our last break in, and we'll be back after these messages.
We've done well.
We have done well. It's because we don't care, because it's almost
because
5.
Medland's
It's almost 5 in the morning.
And thankfully,
here.
Medland's awake.
Okay, so who's watching on YouTube that's on the East Coast right now? Because it's almost 6 a.m. for them.
Oh, Bob, let's call Bob. He'll be awake now. Let's be the first to wish him happy birthday.
Yeah.
Let's call him on the air.
Get the odd expletive, I think.
Kevin Kelly says, John, this feels like a 2-hour show. He's been
Saying that forever.
He's been saying that since I can remember.
So, Chris, this is news to me. So, Sirius are entertaining actual Formula One stars for in-house.
Yeah, that's
great.
It was Williams that approached us about it, basically. And
That's
said,
awesome.
That we're doing a load of media stuff in New York. We could probably pair it up with a visit to the studios. What can we do?
That's great.
I think Sargent and Block are going on Mad Dog Sports Radio.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any other shows have been lined up. And then we'll do a Zoom call, depending on my travel arrangements. Hopefully with me on some other point on that Monday. So we'll get them on wheel to wheel. But
Thank you.
yeah, I won't be physically there, but they will. So they get to see the studios as well. But
That's really good.
very impressive studios they've got. It's just that they're not always full because everything went so remote off the back of COVID.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, we should get some photos from Rob on that.
Yeah, we should. We need to get Jerry Seinfeld on because he's pushing his new Frosted movie. Do you know about that?
I do not, no.
He did a movie about Pop-Tarts.
Of course he did.
Wow.
Yes. Anyway, the reason I say that is because he's partnered up with Chip Ganassi. And I saw the headline on Friday or Saturday, and I was like, we should get SiriusXM to call Seinfeld because he goes in there I see him all the time on different shows, and we need to get him on our show because
It's a show about nothing.
Because it would make my day. That's why. All right, here we go. Coming back.
Hi, this is Mario Andretti, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
The Speed City F1 post-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Don't forget the XM. All right, boys and girls. It's 10 till 5 in the morning in Austin.
If I had a fishing rod, it'd be one thing, but...
A fishing rod?
Well, that's the only thing I'd get up for this time of morning.
Sorry. I'm not a fisherman.
Oh, come on.
I lived on the lake for 8 years and never
You
went
didn't fish?
No, I didn't fish. I rode my dirt bike and I went water skiing. All my sporting events involved internal combustion engines at the time.
Okay.
Okay. What's that, Chris?
Sensible.
Sensible.
Anything with
Yes.
engine.
Sensible.
Yeah.
All right. We had a couple of stories that I wanted to cover in here that were not have to do with today's race. Coda's Bobby Epstein downplays prospects for F1/MotoGP twin bill.
Well, yeah, and that's it's a good story. He basically saying that, with a lot of chat last weekend with MotoGP here now being owned by Liberty Media,
and of course, it was the very first thing that came through my mind, right? When I heard about Liberty.
But you've got to think it's an absolute nightmare for a promoter. What? You're going to take my two best events and turn them into one?
Right.
Whoa! Wait a minute.
Said I can barely take the 440,000 people that show up on a F1 weekend.
What was the other story that Bobby was giving back tickets? I couldn't understand the story.
I did.
Okay,
understand.
So I was
explain
on this call. I was going to say I can explain this one for you guys because I was on this call with Bobby.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been very well explained before the call, so we found out live. It was that early bird tickets were sold at $299 last year. So anyone who they didn't know what they were getting other than a ticket for the race, general admission, this was.
Yeah, 3-day pass.
And before they announced the music headlines, which I think are in a week on Monday.
Yeah.
They're saying between now and about a week after that deadline, so fans will have time, they're willing to buy those tickets back at $350. So you'll make a $51 profit. The reason they're willing to buy them back at that price is because they think that the music act is going to create such great demand that they'll then be able to sell them even higher. And there's going to be 3-day tickets going on sale again, another limited number of GA tickets that will be at a higher price point. So,
right. So they're going to make money on the
essentially,
deal. It's a profit
yeah,
deal.
Okay.
But they're saying if you're a fan that is no longer coming and you want to make some extra money compared to your ticket, we'll buy it back simply and easily from you.
Who do you think
you
the music...
obviously...
Yeah.
I don't know yet on that. They said it's the biggest one since Taylor Swift.
I saw Bobby on Thursday.
But they said that you can sell them privately if you want, but you might lose money in like sellers' fees,
Well,
whatever, through the different
who do we think then?
companies.
So, Bobby, I went to an East Austin business summit, and Bobby.
Yes, you sent me a confused photo.
I
from
knew.
there.
I didn't tell you on purpose, and they actually had it at COTA. It had nothing to do with racing. It was a business thing held by the Boston Business Journal, but it was at COTA, and I was like, well, I got to go to that. So Bobby was up there giving a spiel, talking about COTA and everything, and he started thinking about the musical guest, and he got so excited, and it's very unlike Bobby, and he was like, I can't tell you. He said it's Taylor Swift-esque, the level that our musical guest is going to be.
Tony Bennett?
So
Neil Diamond?
I don't know. Chris just went, who?
The Carpenters are playing live?
All of our audience just went, who? Who are you talking about? Chris, who could be on a Taylor Swift level? I mean, there is no one, but who's the next one down from there?
Foo Fighters.
No.
I admittedly, I mean, Foos would be great to watch live, but I don't think that's who it is. I genuinely don't know though. Yeah, I'm
Gotta be U2.
I'm pretty set in my ways with my love of
U2
like,
are playing.
music
Yeah,
and stuff.
U2 have had residency in Vegas.
I know. The U2 maybe. I mean, I know that's still our demographic, but that's a big, huge name.
Well, as you say,
guys
Chris,
know better than me. Would country be big if they went with someone like Chris Stapleton or someone like that?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
names?
well, we got both kinds of music here, country and western.
Let me text my 19-year-old daughter. Wait, it's 6 a.m. at her house.
Because it's normally one.
Should be just coming home.
There's multiple headliners, isn't there, over a weekend? But,
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
could see
usually
that
they have
fans
one
weren't
Friday
delighted
night and
with
one
the offer.
Saturday night.
Yeah,
the usual.
and that's what Bobby said he thought was going to be the big impact on tickets.
Well,
but,
and-
I saw fans weren't delighted with the offer because they said, well, you're trying to profit now off this. But everyone profits if they do sell it at that price. So I think people can just wait it out, see what the music act is, and then make their mind up if they want. But sounds like we'll have another big crowd, whatever happens.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about how they've pulled it off before, like you mentioned Taylor Swift, we've had Bruno Mars, we've had Stevie Wonder.
Elton John.
Elton John. I mean, these are absolute household names. So
A-listers,
it is worth holding back if you are a music fan, because that just to go to a concert like that in itself is pretty cool.
Big time. And that's what I always find that's great about the United States Grand Prix. The amount of times I have to time when I want to leave the track because I want to make sure I'm not stuck in the concert traffic rather than race traffic, because so many people are hanging around for that. But it does seem to be epic.
Well, you can. I'm sure you can stay in the wheel-to-wheel T11 condo, can't you?
Sure, yeah. Not been in there, but yeah. I'll have to have a word. Get a blow up mattress or something in there.
There's a couple other stories. I figure all stories are on the table at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
I marked one up. You got to be even older than me to know about Iski cams.
Yeah, what the heck is that?
An Iski cam. There's a guy named Ed Iskadarian. Who
Bless you. You should get like
he was like the Edelbrock before Edelbrock. He invented the camshafts that he had were the best of the best.
It
right?
really is time for your bed, isn't it?
He's 102 years old, and I think he's a part of the Motorsport Hall of Fame. But he's 102 years old, and he walked outside of his house the other day, and some guy came up and punched him in the face and stole his phone. And he gathered himself up, went inside, did his Find My iPhone, called the police, had the guy arrested, and then went to work. And he was 102 years old after getting punched in the face and thrown to the ground.
Wow.
But I don't know if anybody knows who Ed Iski is.
What's he doing working at 102? Will someone please help that guy retire?
He's a friend of Fernando Alonso.
Live a life of luxury.
He's teammates with Fernando Alonso.
He was going back to the Iski factory where they make Iski camshafts, maybe, I guess. But
Wow.
Incredible.
What goes on inside that head, eh?
Okay, what do you got at 5 a.m.?
I want ESPN back on so I can watch the basketball.
I think let's rev it up for what's coming next.
Yes,
that was a great
Imola.
Great. No,
Miami.
yes.
We're getting on a plane in a few days.
Weekend as well. Yeah, exactly, and it's going to be like thrill a minute in terms of track action for people. I hope it's a bit more competitive for the race win, because we've seen this weekend even when Max is dominating in the way he is, look at what Norris managed to do and how close Leclerc was to Perez as well. Like the fight for second is exciting. So I'm hoping that we can just see a bit more at the front, because it could be an epic weekend in Miami if we get a fight at the front.
Well, and remember, it's Miami. That means there's about a 50% chance of rain any single day. And we haven't had rain there.
No,
but
it's surprising.
There's always a chance of rain in Miami.
Yep, good point.
So
no, it should be a good weekend.
It's going to be huge.
Oh, it's going to be
amazing.
amazing.
As well, I'm looking at Miami as a big barometer for how F1 is doing in the US in terms of, is it still being engaging? Are fans still enjoying it, even if we've got this Verstappen dominance? Because we've had the boom, we've got 3 races now, but it's normally years 2 and 3 that are the tougher years.
Yeah.
As Bobby Epstein always said with COTA, for a new race, the excitement of a new race wears off, and either you've convinced people to come back because they enjoyed it when they went for the first time, or your product is still good enough that people are waiting, like just desperately trying to get tickets and finally get to go in year 3 or year 4, whatever. So
you know what, Chris?
I think it'll be really interesting to see.
I agree.
Get a read on that.
Yes, I love this idea to think about this, but it still feels like here in the States that F1 has a ton of momentum. Now, I have some numbers. These are off the top of my head, but the first year, Miami, the ESPN ratings were, I think, 2.7 million people, which was the most watched ever, I think, live. And then the next year, last year, it dropped to 2.1, which was still, or right at 2, something like that.
Still pretty good.
Huge numbers, but a significant drop off from the first year. So I'll be very interested to see what happens in year 3. So,
and it's a sprint race.
Yes, that's true too. And I know how you love those.
I think you're right. You're right that obviously the drop off is big, but it's always going to be, that intrigue of the first race, and then you've seen it once, so let's see it second time around. And I think in the first year there was maybe a bit more jeopardy around the title fight at that stage. We've seen Ferrari winning a couple of races and they were in that mix. Last year, not so much. So I think that was natural. If it's somewhere near or holds around that 2 mark, or even just slightly below, that's very good still.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we've got to look at it the wider context, haven't we? And it's just solidifying what F1 has right now. Because in terms of a product for a race win, that's the one thing that's lacking. It's the only thing that's lacking, I'd say, really, but it is lacking.
That's true.
Andy P is on YouTube and says, thanks for burning the midnight oil this morning. Hey, Andy, thank you.
No, I don't think they're playing.
Along those lines, Kevin Kelly says, how about Genesis, the Not Dead Yet tour? That's pretty good.
I'm not dead yet.
That's pretty good, Kevin. Hey, we're done. We're out of time. We're out of energy.
Chris, thank you for saving our lives.
Yes, Chris, thank you for...
You're all heroes. Everyone on YouTube as well for staying up at this hour.
Yes, thanks to everybody. Thanks everybody. And we'll be up next
Miami.
Sunday night. We'll have a Sunday night show, and then we'll be in Miami. Talk to y'all soon.
Happy trails.